Welcome to Bitcoin Escape Plan. The topic of today's video is the Bitcoin dump over, or is it just getting started? As always, we're going to start off with the 4-hour chart just to reward anyone who is here early on the video. And then at the end of today's video, we'll be going over what is happening on the daily time frame, which is super important. A big change has just happened, so make sure you watch to the end for that. Like and subscribe. Let's get into it. 4-hour time frame. So, what's been going on for the day? So this is Sunday. We start right over here. As you can see here, we interact with this 89.5K pivot for a while. That was most of the weekend. We were chopping around that. We lost it early in the weekend. We lost it one more time. Recovered strongly from today with it. That's a level I've talked about many times on threads. Even back weeks ago, I was talking about that. So definitely something that all of my followers over there are already aware of. Over here, though, we can see the 4-hour SMA, which is right around 90.3K at the moment. If we remember from other posts that I've made, 90.4K is another daily Fibonacci pivot. So it makes sense that we would have spent time around there. But at the moment, price seems pretty happy being above that and did wick as high as 91.8 earlier today, which is still below. I believe the daily pivot is 92.6K, which we'll again take a look at later in the video. So what do I expect is going to happen in the next 4 to 16 hours? Well, as you can see, Bollinger Bands are starting to tighten a little bit. We did hold strong at that Fib pivot, which is very important. Obviously, we've broken through the SMA. Equally important. You can see we gave all of that back. Those candles are almost identical. This one wicks a little bit higher. This one wicks a little bit lower. But for the most part, most of the volume was bought up and did not fully sell out, which is a good sign. And it did close above the 4-hour SMA, which is a good sign because now we're up here instead of being down here, which means we do, like, the most likely thing is we're going to interact with this guy, which is 92.4-ish, which is right below that 92.6K pivot that I just mentioned, which apparently is on the 4-hour, not just on the daily time frame. And that would be the most likely if we're going to continue this bullish impulse. But I think what's probably most likely is we're going to close this candle, I believe, in about an hour and 20 minutes, and likely we'll push back towards the SMA again. Going into the overnight. So I think it would be more likely that we're going to see another reaction to this guy, what is that, 89.5, right around this same Fibonacci pivot. It looks like another one has opened up slightly lower, but that would be the range that we're paying attention to, is essentially from the top closing candles of this at 91.5 down to where the SMA is at the moment, 90.3, 90.4-ish. And that lower pivot that just opened up. All right, that's the 4-hour time frame. Actually, before we move on, let's take another look at this guy. This is something I've talked about a million times. This is the anchored VWAP. I never touch the anchored VWAP. I just leave it. But it's a super important trend as we're trying to answer this question of, is Bitcoin done, or does it have legs to continue moving? And we want to take a look at the anchored VWAP because, as you can see, this is on the 4-hour time frame. I never change this. Anyone who follows me on Threads knows. I drew this from 2009 on the chart. I never touch it. So this is over here in April. This is the last time that we break it. As you can see, it's clearly rising that entire time. But it's a really important signal because we just don't spend that much time interacting with it. We do on the 1-hour time frame. I'm not going to go over that in today's video. You can see past videos where I do talk about that. But essentially, the anchored VWAP, the anchored volume profile, continued to rise, or actually, sorry, not the anchored volume profile. This is the anchored volume profile. It continued to rise throughout the year, and it does typically rise during this part of the cycle. There are times where you can see we interact with it more often. I believe this is in 2024. And same thing over here, where like right inside of it, in this like proper consolidation period in 2023. So what can we infer from where we are in the cycle now is really one of two scenarios, which is the whole purpose of this video. Is it going to continue dropping, or does it have more legs to run higher? This is all you really need to know, is right here. That 95,000 is currently where the anchor VWAP is. And if the price can't get there and sustain above it, which as you can see, it dropped below over here, end of November, touched it, middle of November, broke below it, middle of November, lost it, end of November, hasn't been back since, hasn't even touched it since, which is not a good sign. Because again, what we want, and we've already spent more time below it than in April, I believe, what we want is to see strength above this to indicate that we are still bullish and that we still have room to run. Otherwise, we're done. I don't know what to tell you. Like, we're done if we cannot reclaim that level and show strength above it. That correlates as well to this guy. This is the point of control on the anchored volume profile, which is all these beautiful little charts over here. And as you can see, this is the point of most volume on the chart at the moment by a fairly significant amount, which just means that's where the most buying and selling took place, is right around that $96,000 level, which is why anytime people ask me questions about where do I think the price is going to be or what do I think is going to happen next, all I really care about is a reaction to this level. Pretty much the space between 95 and 96K is all that matters. How the price reacts to that will tell me, are we done or do we still have room to run? Period. You know, like that's all that I really care about as an analyst, is I'm looking for confluence between the anchored volume profile, which is this guy, and the anchored VWAP, which is this guy. Everything else, all my other indicators and everything is super useful on the lower time frames. But if I'm just like honestly looking at the price and how it's performing, that's what I want to pay attention to, is that guy and that guy. All right, let's go into the higher time frames and take another stab at the question of, are we done or are we going to continue forward in this market? At the moment, like and subscribe. If we take a look at here, this is November. So November closed at 90.382, which is right below that 90.4K pivot that I mentioned, which is what caused us to drop initially because we closed below that. This is the monthly SMA. So if you look here, the only other times that we break the monthly SMA is during the start of a bear market. I've talked about this in other videos, so we'll go over it briefly today, but same thing. You know, we wick down towards it, we don't touch it, we touch it, and then we're in a bear market. We wick down towards it, but don't touch it, we break it, and then we're in a bear market. So we have to assume that that is our baseline scenario. You know, unless the laws of physics in Bitcoin have been rewritten, that has to be our baseline assumption, is we didn't break it over here, and therefore long and strong. No reason otherwise to believe anything but that. But because we have broken it here, everything about the trend in the past, and we can't really go further back than the 2017 cycle, it's kind of irrelevant. Everything that we know from the chart as it stands is when we touch the monthly SMA, and I know a lot of people like the 50, a lot of people like the 200. I just like the 20 week. 20 week has been really reliable for me. It helps me to see a lot of the things that I already expressed by other tools and indicators. Our best case scenario, in my opinion, is that we continue to chop from about here, 103-ish, to where we wicked, to 80. And ideally, we'd be above this guy, which I believe is the 86.1K level that I've talked about a million times, which I believe is a weekly level. White for weekly, yes. So that is a weekly level. So our best case scenario here, to indicate that we are not done with the market yet, is if we close December way up here. And then we've got to give all of that back in January to get down here. And maybe we don't. You know, maybe we continue into January and February like a lot of people want us to. At the moment, we're looking at very low volume in this month of December so far. Look at how much sell volume there is in November. Look how much sell volume there is in October. Where's the buy volume? Where is it? I don't see it reflected on the chart. I don't see buyers coming in and eating up these levels the way that we naturally would expect them to. And I think it's primarily because of the levels I just talked about on the 4 hour. This 96K and the anchored VWAP, which is expressed at the moment at 94K. This, again, by the way, this is the anchored VWAP. This is the same tool. I drew it from way back here, all the way over here. That's where I drew it from. I never touch it. I know some people who are smarter than me and make more money than I do, they will fiddle with it and they'll move it all around. I don't do that. I just like it for macro analysis, and that's what I use it for. So that's the monthly time frame. That's what we have to keep in mind is we have broken the monthly SMA last month, and we did recover above it, which is great, but we just don't have like this guy over here. We broke below it and we recovered above it. And did we set another high? Not really. We set a higher high from this, but did we set a higher high relative to those? No. No, we did not. So in the context of now, what does that mean? That means that we have broken below, and there's a lot more volume in this candle than there were in those other ones. So we've broken below. So our best case scenario for December is likely somewhere in here, but not up here, which I know nobody wants to hear. So like and subscribe anyways, because I'm telling you the truth, not what you want to fucking hear. That's our best case scenario, is that this candle is going to remain above the monthly SMA. We're not going to break below it again. That is the hope. And at the moment, it is looking decent from where we are on Sunday. Again, I'll talk about the daily close at the end of the video, but that's kind of what we're looking for, is we want to see confluence that this stays above the monthly SMA, but the most likely scenario is that we're going to chop around it. This is the month that we broke it, then we closed above it, and then we wicked below, but closed way above it, and then we lost it. That was a 4-month time period that it took for that to express once we had touched the SMA. So what does that mean for us now? Oh no, I didn't want to do that shit. What does that mean for us now? That means month 1, month 2, January, February. That means that we would need to wait until February to see actual confirmation in this particular instance of whether we are going to break down or continue. Now, is that what you want to hear in a video titled, "Are we done yet?" Or "Are we still going?" Or whatever the hell I'm titling this? No, it's not. But this is the same thing over here. We touch it here, month 2, month 3. So it took 3 months in this instance for us to realize, oh, nope, we're going below it and we're staying below it. So I would assume that it's going to take somewhere between now and January or February for us to have real confirmation of this trend. But let's go take the weekly chart and see if there's anything else that we can assume from it. I'm going to hide these guys. So as you can see on the weekly chart, we actually break the SMA more often. It's much more common for us to break below it and for it to not be indicative of a bear market necessarily. We had that famous one in the middle of 2021 where a lot of people thought we were done already. We went on to make new highs. I think realistically, this was our version of that, and we went on to make new highs. I don't think we're going to see new highs in December. I just don't believe it. You can go and check my other videos about my end of year prediction for 2025. It's hard for me to believe that we're going to see a price north of 126K. At the moment, all I really care about personally is I want to see 94 to 96 hold, and I want to see a reaction to just below this at 106.7K is a pretty important Fibonacci pivot on the higher time frames. I want to see a reaction to that before I say anything about believing that it can go higher, because I think it's most likely that over the course of the next 2 weeks, in a best case scenario, volume is randomly going to come out of nowhere, which I don't think is guaranteed, and we're going to fail that pivot, and this SMA is going to continue to get dragged down, and we're probably going to go lower. I know people don't want to hear that. That's just what this chart is telling me. And we had a strong impulse off of 80K that is bringing us higher, but there's nothing about this and this, that makes me think we're going to shoot up there. It's just not how charts work. It's a big possibility, like with this case, where it stayed below it for a little while, it started sloping downward, and we broke on through it. And that could be the case here. That very well could be the case. That in 1 or 2 weeks' time, price is over here, and we've both broken the weekly SMA to the upside, and we've crushed this 106.7K pivot, and we're just ripping. And I'll happily, you can say in the comments how I was wrong. I'll love to like those comments or heart those comments, whatever. I'm just trying to read the chart as it actually stands, and that's what it tells me. Is this is a significant breakdown on the weekly, very different from this. This was a sharp breakdown that we recovered, and then we gave it all back, and then we stayed below it. This is not that. This is, we touched it all the way over here and have been struggling ever since and have lost it. So to me, that looks a little bit more like this pronounced time in 2024, where obviously we went on to set higher highs, but very different context of where we were in the market. And then kind of similar to this guy a little bit. But again, that happened quickly, whereas this did not happen quickly. That's August. That's September that this started happening, that we started to see a failure on the weekly time frame. So if we go back to 2021, our only other examples are here, where it's kind of similar, where we say that this is August, September. This is September right here. So if we were to correlate this to where we are now, that would mean October was the last peak. And now we should be continuing this progression instead, which again, I know nobody wants to hear. I look at my retention graphics, and that's when people leave my videos, is when I say that it's going to go down. People are not happy about it. I don't care. I'm telling you the truth. All right. So that's enough rambling, I think, for the higher time frames. I've talked about this a million times. 106.7K, I think, is really, I think that's going to be make or break for whether we are done with the bull run or whether it's going to continue. Now, I've talked about this in other videos about the broader narratives that are going on. And just to be clear, I say this on Threads all the time. I'm not telling you to sell your Bitcoin just because it's going down. I've never once said that. I'm never going to tell you that. What it is and what it does, you should continue buying it for the rest of your life, period. Especially anytime we're below the weekly or the monthly SMA, it's a great time to buy. It's a great time to buy. Even if you have to wait for an extended period of time like you did over here, you just would have been buying for like a year. You would have, that would have been your DCA period, was here. Now, would it have been better if you were patient during this time period and started DCAing around here to here? Yes, it would have. You would have had a lower cost basis than when the sheer drop was happening. And during this time, you could have taken a bunch of shorts if you wanted to. I mean, this is pre-ETF, so it would have been a little bit more difficult, and you really have to be in a jurisdiction that allows you to do that. But that's the point, is you have the ability to do so. So do I think that you should be shorting from these levels just because I think Bitcoin is going to go lower? No, I don't. What I think you should be doing is waiting for this reaction, if we do indeed get it, and that's when I would be aggressively shorting, probably, if I'm correct. And maybe I'm wrong, and it just shoots up higher. All right, that's enough rambling on those time frames. Let's end the video with a daily analysis. So this is over here. This is Sunday. Sunday closed at 90.4K. What did we say was important earlier in the video? Right here. This Fibonacci pivot at 90.37, which I'm going to call 90.4K because I am lazy. So today closed just above that pivot, which is good. It's now reflecting it as an older pivot, so it's moved on. It's more focused on this guy and this guy down here. Move. Do what I tell you to. 82 down here, which, again, better than here. That's where we wicked down to before. It was like 80.4, 80.6, I believe. So the fact that a Fibonacci pivot is opening there shows some sign of strength that we've already seen the local bottom. and that we're going to continue higher. But as you can see, this pivot has opened up. And I believe, technically these higher pivots are open. So there's like the price is expressing that they're a possibility, but I don't see it on I don't see it on any of the higher time frame charts. And until, like I said earlier in the video, until we see a reaction to the anchored VWAP on the 4 hour and the anchored volume profile, this guy, that 96K, until we see that, there's just nothing. There's nothing to confirm for the trend to be going bullish. So at the moment, it definitely looks like we have finished the expression of the downtrend for now. However, if we fail these key levels, right around here, this 95 to 96, slightly above this 94K pivot, which we have had trouble with so far. This, I would say, is the first attempt at that, though obviously that's the SMA, which, to really get into the core of what's important about this time frame at the moment is we have been below the daily SMA since here. I mean, really, since all the way back here in October. That's when we first, September. So we've broken the daily SMA so many times. We had this long period of time in October where we were below it. We were back above it for 4 days and then dropped back below it. Fought to reclaim it. We're back above it for a day and a half and then lost it. And then have showed no strength since then, since November 3rd, essentially. We've just continued to fail and drop lower and lower and lower. That was really our first attempt to get back to it before failing again. Then we got above it. We stayed above it for 3 days, and then we lost it on Friday. We closed Saturday below it, and then Sunday we reclaimed it and closed above it. And now in the overnight of Sunday and going into Monday, we are currently above it, which is a good sign. Again, our best case scenario at the moment is we get a strong reaction in 94, and that pulls us higher to the anchored VWAP at 95 and to the anchored volume profile at 96. So that realistically is what we're going to want to see tomorrow. If we have a strong move tomorrow in the markets, which let's take a quick look at stock market to see. Stock market still doesn't have a clear indication whether the high is in or not. I'm of the opinion that it's probably not done yet. Same for gold. It's just like not really behaving the same way that Bitcoin did. Like if you look, obviously it dropped after its October high, and then it's kind of been consolidating but trending upward. Whereas Bitcoin, that's just not what it looks like, dude. It's like that's almost like 50% lower than that. Like we have not seen the same trend for the stock market and Bitcoin, or in gold rather, expressed in Bitcoin. Now, a lot of people are saying that there's a possibility that we're going to just see it expressed late. I know people are talking about the December rate cuts, which I think is this week. I think that's either Tuesday or Wednesday that we'll get confirmation on that. That does not directly indicate that there's going to be a bullish move for Bitcoin. So that being said, say best case scenario, they give us really strong rate cuts in December. What that realistically is going to mean is we're going to get another strong impulse. And then the same thing that I've already repeated 42 times in this video. We need to pay attention to a reaction to 94, 95, and 96. And if there's a weak reaction to that, then it's going lower again, period. Like there's nothing else I can say to fluff that up. That's what's going to happen. Is if there's a weak reaction to 94, 95, and 96, it's going lower. If it consolidates around there, that's a good sign. That's a good sign. That means that we're going to have another chance at 99. And once we're back above 99 or 101, I think we can kind of relax a little bit of, worrying about an immediate drop. But I think that fear comes back right away depending on the reaction to the 105.7K pivot and the more important one, which is 107.K. 106.7 rather. I don't know what the fuck I just said. That's the most important one on both the monthly and the weekly time frame. So that's a daily chart. What I would be paying attention to is we want to make sure we maintain above 90.4K for the rest of Monday. That would be strong, As you can see, this channel right here, we spent a bunch of time there. So not wicking back below that for the rest of the time today would be a good sign. So this guy over here where we already went way below that was, within the last couple hours. That's what we want to see for the next 4-hour candle is we don't want to see it break back to the downside. We want to actually see it jump to the upside. That will have a reaction to the top of the Bollinger Band unless it starts to expand rapidly, which it probably won't until volume returns during the day on Monday. That's what I'd be looking for at the moment. I'm going to be working on the newsletter, so keep your eyes peeled for that. Like and subscribe. Leave a comment. Let me know how I'm doing with my analysis. I always appreciate the feedback. And thank you guys so much. I will see you in the next one.